Deontology, ethics of duty and rights. This is another way. Act upon principles, not consequences. If we believe that protecting the environment is the way to go, then we should not worry about economical issues or consequences. Okay? It's easy to say than to act upon, but that's Immanuel Kant was the one of these voices who actually talked about deontology. Pragmatism, it's simply, is it practical? This is one of the fundamental Western ethics. It talks about how practical it is. Can we really utilize this, the approach that we're talking about in protecting the environment? Okay, and then what you may hear, deep ecology. This is one of the more recent phenomena that has grown. When we talk about shallow and deep ecologies are two different philosophical thoughts. And not everybody really agrees on what they mean, but I think basically what they mean is that environmental crisis is an outcome of an imbalanced approach. And this is to step back and look at it from a bigger approach or a bigger perspective. Okay, so you're not simply seeing why is that, and I'll keep bringing the barred owl. Why is the barred owl, coming to an extinction? But you're looking at why are we cutting all these trees down? Okay, so you're just not looking at one species, but you're looking at the holistic ecology. Why are we changing the face of the earth? Do we really need to have these roads going through the wetlands or the streams? Do we really need to put these bridges here? Okay, do we really need to put these dams here? Because they're going to have environmental consequences that are not going to be favorable to these species. So the way we live, maybe perhaps you want to question that. Do we really need, and I work in land use, which really deals with the land use, right? Which really deals with the issues involving how we divide the lots and blocks and how we live, right? The city, actually, that it tends to be more environmental friendly as compared to the suburban sprawl, just spreading out and taking over the entire piece of land, okay? Rather than having a cluster of cities, just taking over all the roadways that were built and all the suburban areas that we grew up, that we spread out to. So deep ecology, it's taking a look more from a perspective that, it's a deeper problem. And it's just not one bird or one animal going extinct or one wetland that we're going to lose, but the way we're living. Okay, it perhaps involves economy, it perhaps involves the politics, it perhaps involves other issues, right? Medical issues and medical ethics, and why the people are doing these things. Okay, and lastly, I just want to touch on anthropocentric and biocentric views. Do trees have standing? Anthropocentric, where human beings obviously are in the center of attention, and how they relate to environmental consequences, where everything comes back to human beings. So am I going to lose some money, or am I going to have some consequences that are going to affect human health, ozone layer? Or is it because some other animal is going to suffer? So for example, is animal testing for medical reasons, is that allowed? Should we conduct these researches, or should we not? What if it benefits human beings? What if there is a slight chance of benefit but more harm? How do we relate with that? Should we always ask about humans first, or should we also consider, which is the biocentric approach? No, we should also show concern for the animals just as human beings. Okay, so which approach should we take? Next one, please. All right, so these are some of the other ones, and I'll just move on to the next slide. Rights of animals and ecofeminism, these are some of the other ones that have come up. Holism, that we should look at all these things at a bigger perspective than just one small issues. But these are all Western ethics, Western environmental ethics that we're talking about. And these are not just Western environmental ethics. If we're looking at it as environmental crisis, a global phenomena, that we have to look into it as this is what different human civilizations or human population has to offer, knowledge that we have to offer to each other, and how we could build and perhaps learn from other people. And that is, I think, I believe, the reason why you would see whenever there is religion or philosophy and ethics involved, environmentally speaking, then it's comparing all the others. So we're not just talking about Islamic. It's, I've looked into Jewish response, the Christian, the Zoroastrian response, even the Hindu response. All these ethics are put together. And what you would find that, and this is all agreed upon from what I've read, and this is what I understand, that what you would find is that although people are coming from different sources, they're coming from different traditions, the goal is the same. Okay? And I don't want, like, a lot of times I think Muslim students also, they think that Islamic environmental ethics is something that is, like, over everything else. Okay? And, the Christians, it would be the same thing, too. They would think Christian environmental ethics is over everything else, right? And same as Buddhist and other ethics that are there. But the concept, the idea is that the source of the knowledge that you're coming from, or the decision making, is coming from, in the case of Islamic environmental ethics, from the Islamic sources. And the results that are produced, right? So the principles that are produced, they're all agreed upon. Nobody's saying, like, Buddhist environmental ethics or Christian environmental ethics or in Islamic environmental ethics, none of them are going to say that to protect the environment is bad, or it's not agreed upon from a religious perspective. All of them agree that we have to protect the environment. Okay? So I just want to be clear on that one. And these are the sources: Quran, Hadith, and Fiqh. Next one, please. Next one, Fiqh. Okay. Quickly, I could mention some of the terminology or some of the verses that have been mentioned. Okay. One particular verse, some of the contemporary scholars in environmental ethics that they talk about, is that they would gather verses. For example, the verse that talks about, in Arabic, it's وَالْأَرْضَ وَضَعَهَا لِلْأَنَامِ, that God created the earth for the beasts, okay, or for animals. That verse in particular mentions animals, but not human beings. And the ethicists, they would describe that and further go into explanation of the fact that God created the earth, so it's not that humans or Muslims should look at it as that it belongs to them and they could, the idea of conquer the earth. That's not from the Islamic perspective. The idea is that you could take from the earth, but it's not for you to destroy. Okay? And the earth belongs to God again. So one has to be careful how they deal with the earth and environmental issues here henceforth. And they're responsible for the actions that they carry on this earth. And they're going to answer on the Day of Judgment from the Muslim perspective. Okay, another verse, it talks about He created everything on the earth with mizan, okay, which is the balance. Really, literally what you balance the items on. And the idea of balance is that, and the next verse is in Arabic, أَلَّا تَطْغَوْا فِي الْمِيزَانِ, do not destroy the balance. Okay, and when the ethicists, they're talking about this balance, they're saying that all the creatures were created, and because of the imbalance approach, because of the approach taken by human beings, polluting, consuming too much, wasting, right? That is the reason why we have these crises, environmentally crises that we're talking about. And because they're there, it's an indication that we have gone into extremes. We have hurt this balance that God placed on earth, and the air, and the earth, and the sea, and the land, and the soil, and the forest, and the species that are out there. All of that there was a balance. But the human beings, because they became people of extreme consumption, they destroyed that balance. And what God is telling us, and this is what Sayyid Hussein Nasr and other people are talking about, that God is telling us not to go into extremes, and be balanced people.